Hello everyone and welcome to a section titled Creating the User Interface using XAML. In this section we will learn about the Xamarin.Forms Platform Architecture and then learn how to create each of the content pages for our medications app using XAML. Next we will learn how to incorporate binding within our content pages and attach these to properties that are contained within our view models. We will then move on and learn how to download and add images to both our iOS and Android solutions for our medications app, and then deploy and launch our medications app using the iOS and Android emulators. Finally, we will learn how to test our medications app by writing test case scenarios using the UI test framework and the Xamarin Test Cloud Agent. So let's get started. Overview of the Xamarin.Forms Platform Architecture. In this video, we'll be taking a look at what exactly is the Xamarin.Forms Platform Architecture and when you should develop apps using this platform versus developing them natively for each platform. We will also take a look at what benefits you have when developing native apps using Xamarin and the benefits of developing apps using the Xamarin.Forms approach. So essentially, when it comes to cross-platform development tools, there's no Xamarin is the gold standard. Once you've made the decision to build apps in C# and Xamarin, you'll need to make one more choice, and that is whether to use Xamarin.Forms or build your apps directly using Xamarin for iOS and Android. At the highest level, that decision comes down to weighing up development time versus cost and whether delivering a fully native experience. Xamarin.Forms is an abstraction layer that allows you to push common user interface code to multiple platforms, where if you build in Xamarin.iOS and Xamarin.Android, the UI development work is all done in the native platforms. So let's understand the Xamarin platform and the benefits. Xamarin is essentially a framework that enables you to develop cross-platform mobile applications using the C# programming language. Xamarin also offers developers a single programming language, as well as a runtime that runs on Android, iOS, and Windows, that gives you an app that looks, feels, and behaves completely native. Xamarin also allows developers to write one single codebase using C#, which gives you access to all of the features available with the native SDK. You can even use any of your existing APIs so that these can be shared across each of the mobile platforms for iOS, Android, and Windows. So the bottom line is essentially anything you can do in Objective-C, Swift, or Java can be done in C# with Xamarin using Visual Studio or Visual Studio for Mac. So let's look at developing native apps with Xamarin and the benefits of doing it that way. So Xamarin provides you with the flexibility to write C# code so that you have the flexibility to design native user interfaces specifically for each platform. The C# source code that you write is then compiled into a native app for each platform. So what are some of the reasons to choose native over Xamarin.Forms? So the Xamarin.Forms abstraction layer that allows you to build for iOS and Android typically leads to a larger application size, together with the increased overhead, which typically means the loading process for an app takes longer, particularly on Android. So that said, Xamarin and Microsoft have made great performance improvements across the board for Xamarin since the two companies joined forces in early 2016. But there's no denying that a multi-platform app built in Xamarin.Forms can end up bigger and slower. So if your app needs to be lightning fast to deliver a great user experience, you may want to choose Xamarin Native. The second point of developing native over Xamarin.Forms is if your application has a complicated UI with lots of intensive graphics, you might need to go with Xamarin Native to ensure optimal performance. Xamarin.Forms, like the name indicates, was conceived to offer a UI framework geared for clear decision-based or form-based flows through an app. Highly dynamic content may be better suited for an app that's coded in C# with Xamarin, but designed on the native platforms in Xamarin.iOS and Xamarin.Android. And another reason why you would probably want to go native is if you want to use a native feature that's not available on both platforms. So Android and iOS seem to be catching up with each other in terms of what features each platform offers, but there are some features and even UI controls that are exclusive to one platform. Xamarin.Forms doesn't provide an abstraction for these features because there's nothing cross-platform about them. As a simple example, in iOS has a widget called a segment control, for which Xamarin.Forms doesn't have a associated control. You can always implement controls like this for yourself in Xamarin.Forms, but that's more time spent developing UI widgets and less time spent polishing your business logic. So if there are make or break UI elements that you must have in your app that aren't cross-platform, Xamarin Native is probably the way to go. So let's look at developing using the Xamarin.Forms approach. So Xamarin.Forms allows you to build user interface code that can be shared across each of the mobile development platforms using 100% shared C# code. And Xamarin.Forms includes more than 40 controls and layouts which are mapped to each of the native controls at runtime. So let's look at 4 reasons why you would want to choose Xamarin.Forms. So if your development budget is tight and if your business case for demands launching on both iOS and Android and you need to save as much development cost as possible, you may choose to go Xamarin.Forms. Second reason to choose Xamarin.Forms is if you need to get your apps out to market fast. And thirdly, if you want your apps to be simple to update, and the benefits of using Xamarin for multi-platform apps is that with a single code base, the process of updating and maintaining those apps over time is simplified. And this is especially true for Xamarin.Forms, when much of the UI is also shared. And that means future updates can be much more easily rolled out to both Android and iOS. A fourth reason to choose Xamarin.Forms is if your internal team is more experienced with .NET than Android and iOS. And the fifth reason is if there are a lot of nuances to the mobile platforms, especially when it comes to user interface design. And if your development team has a rich history in Microsoft technologies and C#, you can do most of your development using Xamarin.Forms. So now that you have a good understanding into what exactly is the Xamarin.Forms platform and the benefits of developing your apps using either native or the Xamarin.Forms way, you will see the benefits of developing apps using Xamarin.Forms as we progress throughout this video course.